begins, sizing up Murphy, drives, floats, hangs, and scores on the turnaround. J-Dub way behind the three-point line and hits way behind the three-point line. Got blocked, what a rejection by Holmgren. Standing tall like a wall.
This is Udart. You're listening to the Uncontested.
What is up, Thunder fans? And welcome to the Uncontested Postgame Podcast. I am your host for tonight, Taylor. You can find me also on all social media platforms at Taylor_P15. You can find us wherever you listen to your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, YouTube. We go live pretty much after every game, plus our Wednesday and Sunday group podcasts. Also, be sure to look up in the top, right-hand corner for you all and join our Patreon. There's a QR code there you can scan. We have bonus podcasts. Nick Silva and myself all recently did an NBA draft podcast. That was a lot of fun. We'll continue to provide some bonus content like that throughout the year, as well as access to our Discord when you're a Patreon subscriber. So be sure to join that. We have a ton of fun in the Discord, even if it's gotten a little hostile over the past couple of games. Not really. It's been a lot of fun. We really enjoy it. Talk about all sorts of different things in there, even when it's not Thunder game day. So be sure to join in there. We do live watch parties. We'll have another one of those coming up. And speaking of live watch parties, we need to plan our in-person live party coming up sometime this spring. So stay tuned for that as well. But enough about us. The Thunder played another basketball game tonight. A Sega Baba, as they beat the shorthanded Rockets 137-128 to win now their fourth straight game and to reach the 50-win mark with 21 games left in the season. Pretty amazing. Just to put that into perspective, some pretty fun stats that came out after the game tonight. Combination of these from the Thunder and Royce Young, as well as a broadcast that I went ahead and captured before jumping on the podcast. The Thunder win 50 games for the 9th time in Thunder history. And they now have the most 50-win seasons since 2009-2010 with 9. The Celtics and Nuggets and Clippers and Spurs each have 8. The Cavs have 7. The Warriors have 7. The Rockets and Grizzlies each with 6. That's insane. We talked about this rebuild. The Thunder trade away Russell Westbrook and Paul George. And for most teams, especially a small market team like the Thunder, it's probably going to take a long time to get back to that level, but not with the Sam Presti at the head of your organization. Just incredible stuff from this Thunder team, the organization as a whole, what they've been able to do. Since 1970, 1971, the Thunder are the 6th team to win 50 games before another team in its conference wins 40. The Thunder reached the 50-game mark tonight before the second place team in the West got to 40 wins. That's insane. The last team to do that was the 2004-2005 Miami Heat. And then old friend, Chuck Chaney, founder of Thunder Digest, tweeted this out. This season for the Thunder, it took them less games to reach 50 wins than any other season in franchise history. 61 games to reach 50 wins for the Thunder this season. The next was 2012-2013. We all know how fun that season was. It took the Thunder 67 games to reach 50 wins. Just pretty crazy. So again, we're talking about an historical team here doing incredible things. Obviously, there's been some ups and downs here recently, and we'll get into those. But as a whole, I think those stats just really put things into perspective, how special this team is and just what we're witnessing this season. So before we get into a little bit of a breakdown of the game, we'll go through my big takeaways. We'll do, like I said, a quick breakdown of kind of what happened tonight, and then kind of look ahead at the schedule because the Thunder do have a pretty tough, not in terms of opponents they'll be facing, but more travel for a team that's already banged up. Thought it would be good to just kind of dive into that at the end of the podcast before we get out of here. So my big takeaways from tonight, obviously, historic night for the MVP, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. An update on the double big lineup. Thought there were some positives to take away from tonight. Looked better at times. Still some concerns overall, but also a very concerted effort from Mark tonight to play them a lot together, which really stood out to me. The Thunder's recent defensive concerns. So a lot of you, especially in the Discord, that have been asking about that. So I thought it was good to put that into perspective, look at some stats, and we'll dive into that. The Thunder injuries, I think it's worth noting because they continue to pile up, knock on wood, even if they've been kind of smaller injuries. And then finally, a Thunder hot streak update, which is basically a way for me to cheat and talk about 3 different players instead of just one. So some pregame notes as we get into the game. Like I said, a Sega Baba, the 7th game and 11 nights for the Thunder. 5 of those on the road. If I did my quick math right, we all know the uncontested is not very good at doing math on the podcast. That's well chronicled, I think, at this point. But needless to say, it's been a pretty tough stretch, even heading back before the All-Star break. And we talked some about that last night on our group podcast. Chet played tonight. That was great to see him back. He only missed 1 game with that ankle sprain, so it was good to see him come back after missing last night's game. And it was only Isaiah Joe who set out again with back soreness, is what they're calling it, outside of the obvious ones, and AJ and Topic, we won't see the rest of the season. Hopefully we see AJ here next month at some point, or at the end of this month. On the Houston side, I mentioned at the top of the podcast, short-handed Houston Rockets. They sat Şengün, Amin, Thompson, Fred VanVleet, and Dylan Brooks, basically 4 of their best players on the first night of their Sega Baba as they play the Pacers tomorrow night. And they started Jabari Smith, Jack Landell, Jalen Green, Reed Shepherd, and Cam Whitmore. Very much felt like a team who kind of scheduled this as a loss. And we're looking ahead. Just again, this is a tough stretch for all NBA teams, not just the Thunder. And these guys are just trying to stay healthy and win the important games that they need to. I think the Rockets kind of viewed this one probably as a loss to begin with, almost a scheduled loss. Although when you play guys like the guys I just mentioned, you're going to have some very motivated players. And we kind of saw that, I think, tonight against a Thunder team, again, on a Sega Baba, going through a really tough stretch of travel and a bunch of games in a compacted time period. And that kind of showed. But overall, the Thunder took care of business when it mattered against a shorthand Rockets team. Shout out George Kittle. The tight end for the San Francisco 49ers was sitting courtside for this game. And honestly, when I saw that, my boss sent me a picture. Shout out my boss who was there, also sitting on the floor, not courtside, but on the floor. It was pretty cool. He sends me a picture of George Kittle. I'm like, what is George Kittle doing at a Thunder game? But then somebody tweeted out, can't remember who, but he's a Norman High alum, which I completely forgot about. So he's home during the offseason, probably visiting family. I got to sit courtside and witness the MVP, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander himself. So that's cool to see celebrities coming through. We've had the Drakes, and now we have the Kittles. We've had a bunch of high-profile people come, Lil Wayne in the past. That's pretty cool for OKC. Diving into the game, really slow start for the Thunder, honestly. The first quarter, just the effort wasn't there. Caruso, Wiggins, Kaysen were the first subs. But, I mean, I just kept typing this out in my notes. The energy just wasn't there. The defense wasn't locked in. They weren't really generating good offense. And again, there was a lot of concerns in our Discord, at least, about the double big lineup and the slow starts they continue to come out of. At the end of the first quarter, the Thunder were down 31-30 against the Rockets. Shai had 20 of those 30 points. Kind of crazy. I don't have this pull up in front of me, but the Rockets also took like 7 more shot attempts. They were shooting better from 3. Thunder also got out rebounded. Like I said, the effort just wasn't there in the first. But the second quarter is when things really started to change. Mark started Dub, Chet, Kenrich, Kaysen, and Wiggins to start the second. Kind of interesting. I thought Dub had a really solid game yet again, but he went scoreless until about 8 minutes left in the second quarter, when I believe his first 2 points were off free throws. Caruso went back to the locker room. Thankfully, he came back to the bench shortly after, but he didn't come back in the game. We'll talk about him a little later. Rockets go on a 10-3 run, but the Thunder finally go on a run of their own, 45-44. They regained the lead thanks to Kaysen Wallace, who was awesome in that stretch. Had 2 outside shots. I can't call them 3-pointers because one of them was ruled short, but a great defensive possession after Kaysen's second 3 led to a Dub slam and a 13-2 run for OKC over the last 2 minutes during that stretch, largely sparked by Kenrich and Kaysen Wallace, who I thought were awesome. Our guy Nick Crane tweeted this out. Kenrich Williams at that point was a game high plus 11, 7 points in 7 minutes. And almost all those came, if not all those, came on second chance points. Just a classic Kenrich Williams game. He was doing a little bit of everything, and it was him and Kaysen's defense that really sparked that comeback there in the second quarter. Kaysen had another big 3, and then the Shai Gilgeous-Alexander show starts. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately for us Thunder fans who wanted to see Shai play and not just be a blowout, and Shai not get to play the fourth quarter when he's playing so well. But Shai and Jalen Green basically just go back and forth. Shai was just incredible to end the second quarter. And really, it was kind of capitalized off by a nasty snatchback crossover for the mid-range pull-up, I believe on Aaron Holiday. And an OG hang pull, if you will, as Chet Holmgren would call it. There on the right elbow, right around the free throw line, just an insane play. Made the rounds of social media. Be sure to go and pull that up. Shai was just unstoppable, and that would continue in the second half. At halftime, Shai had 28 points, 1 rebound, 2 assists, a steal, and a block on great efficiency. But the non-SGA starters, 16 points, 5 rebounds, 5 of 14 from the floor. That's a problem. But like I mentioned, Kaysen and Kenrich were both awesome in that first half. Third quarter, another slow start, little defense being played. The same starters to start the game played in the third. Honestly, I thought Lou looked pretty awful. I tweeted this out there in the third and start the fourth quarter. And of course, he hits 2 huge threes in the fourth, which we'll get into. And then finally had his third there to kind of a dagger to end the game. But ultimately, I thought Lou just kind of looked lost defensively, let Jalen Green blow by him a couple of times, just uncharacteristic. And it feels like Lou is going through a slump on both ends of the floor right now. I understand he had 20 points against the Hawks on Friday, but overall, it just the effort there for he just seems off. He gets ejected the last game because he's getting fired up. It just feels like Lou's a little off right now. But they get a little bit of momentum, the Thunder do in the third because of Shai. Landale hits Hart in the throat, and Ime Udoka thought that shouldn't have been a foul for some reason. He gets teed up, and then Shai just took over. He had 32 points after a step back 3 with 9 minutes still left to go in the third. We got the second double big alley-oop, this time from Chet to Ironhart, which is really cool. And Green gets teed up immediately after. At this point, the Rockets just the wheels started to fall off. And we thought it's probably going to be taken care of. Jalen Green kept going for the kill with his dunks and continued to fail miserably, which led to Dub getting a slam in transition, one of the dunks that Jalen Green really wanted. 2-handed slam from Dub with Dort passing to him in the corner as Dub cuts in transition. Thunder go up 84-69 with about 6 minutes left. Then Shai, 40 points. He just continued to do Shai things. But Houston hits 4 straight threes to cut the lead to 9. The Rockets go on a run. Can't seem to miss from 3. Shai ends up with 45 to end the quarter, but Reed Shepherd really kept the Rockets alive. Fourth quarter, we'll go a little quicker here. Mark starts with the double big lineup again. Shepherd continued to catch fire. 8-0 run after a Wiggins turnover. The Rockets cut it down to 6. Also, Dub hurts the same wrist again. I think it's the same wrist. This time it was his right wrist. Maybe it's the left that's been bothering him. I can't remember. He continues to have wrist issues after he drove to the rim, didn't get a foul call, and then kind of ran to the cameraman yet again. But as I tweet out that Lou's not playing well and is struggling and chunking up shots, he drills 2 straight threes, which was huge. Chet and Shai check back in at this point. Dub comes back from the locker room with a taped up hand and actually checks back in. The Rockets cut it back down to 8. But Dub comes back in. Lou had a huge deflection after his couple of threes that led to Shai's 51st points games, 51st points of the night. Sorry. And Lou ends the game with a dagger 3. So props to the shorthanded Rockets for sticking in this one and continuing to fight back. Obviously, had a lot of fight in them and wanted this one and wanted to take advantage of the opportunities of playing time that some of these guys don't usually get. But even with the Thunder being on the second night of a back-to-back, tired legs, going through the tough schedule like we mentioned, they were able to respond. That's what makes this team really special. So, getting into my big takeaways of the game, we got to start at the very top, the low-hanging fruit. Historical night from the MVP SGA, which leads me to my king of the Prairie, Prairie L's player of the game, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Hard to give it to literally anybody else tonight. Shai had, let me get my stats pulled back up in front of me. 51 points, 5 rebounds, 7 assists, 18 of 30 from the floor, 5 of 9 from 3. That's a season high and made threes for Shai this season. 10 of 10 from the free throw line, just nearly perfect. Also had a block and a steal, did a little bit of everything. He was just absolutely phenomenal. And guess what? Some more stats to put that into perspective. Shout out to Daniel Bell, who tweeted this out. 8th longest streak in a single season of games with 20-plus points for SGA. 12th longest streak in NBA history, and the 10th player in history to have a streak this long. Just insane stuff from Shai. He also becomes the 12th player in NBA history to record 4 or more 50-point games in a season. That's from Thunder PR, and ties Russell Westbrook for the most 50-point games in a season of Thunder history. He's now only he ties KD for second most all-time 50-point games for the Thunder. It's insane that the Thunder went from one of the best scorers maybe ever in Kevin Durant, now to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, another historical scorer. And I mean, he's just getting started for this team. That's really exciting. I find this game interesting in contrast to some of the recent games that Shai's played. And we talked about this as well in the group podcast Sunday night. But Shai's recent stretch of kind of making a concerted effort to get teammates involved rather than just being aggressive and trying to go and get 30, 40, 50 points every single game. He can get 30 even when he's not, just taking as many shots as he did maybe tonight. But I think the balance there is really important. We talked about Shai's comments pre-All-Star break where he mentioned, he felt, reflecting back on the Mavericks series, that he didn't do a good enough job during the regular season getting other players reps and getting them more involved. And he hated the feeling of losing. He didn't want to feel that again. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing, like I said, during this tough stretch where it takes the depth of this team to really pull off some of these victories like we've seen over the past week or two. We're seeing Shai make more of an effort to get his teammates involved. But tonight, it's not to say that he wasn't looking for his teammates. I mean, there's plenty of times he had shots that he could have taken to try and get 60 points, but he made the right pass, led to the Thunder zipping the ball around the perimeter and led to open 3-point attempts for his teammates, whether they went in or not. But his ability to read the game and what the defense is giving him early and then analyzing and adjusting as the game goes along, it just reminds me so much of that first season with Chris Paul. That's what Chris Paul is obviously known to do. And Shai talked about the impact that Chris had on him and in that regard specifically. So that's just something I wanted to mention. Obviously, tonight was a huge scoring night for the MVP and Shai, but it's really impressive the balance he's been able to find here down the stretch. I'm curious how that looks moving forward through the rest of the season. Next, go ahead and take this off. My King of the Prairie. There we go. Next. Yeah, we got Rumble in the background. He's kind of throwing me off. He is begging for treats, and he does not need anymore. Update on the double big lineup. Mark obviously made a concerted effort to play them together as much as possible. I think there was a small stretch there. I can't remember if it was in the second or the third quarter where iHeart was the sole big in the second lineup, or the second lineup, basically with J-Dub running the show. And then we had a couple stretches there in the first and second halves where it was Chet as the sole big with no iHeart. But for the most part, they played the most minutes together I think that we've seen since Chet's come back from his hip injury. And like I said, I think Mark made especially with Chet kind of getting set back there with that ankle injury, it was obvious to me that, we're running out of time. I think I said 21 games left. Mark obviously is wanting more data points with those two playing together. And in the first half, it didn't look great. Pulling Chet away from the rim, and that when he's guarding forwards, when you're playing the double bigs, that continues to be an issue for this lineup. Obviously, Chet's best when he's playing around the rim. And I talked about, when Chet was coming back from injury, playing him and iHeart together would allow Chet to play more of a free safety role, maybe get more blocks and defend the rim better. But what we're seeing is it's actually taking him away further from the rim out to the 3-point line, and that's causing this team some issues. I also thought iHeart looked uncomfortable at times offensively. He didn't have a huge offensive game tonight, although I thought he made some just insane passes tonight, which were huge for this team. But then flash forward to the third quarter, and I thought it went quite a bit better. It looked a lot better. There was that stretch there in the third where the Thunder went on a big run and were able to get up like almost 18 points, I believe. And I thought the double big lineup looked really well. The two plays that stick out to me the most are the obvious ones, and those are the two alley-oops. We saw iHeart throw a lob to Chet for a dunk, and then Chet returned the favor later in the game with a alley-oop to iHeart during that time. But also the defense looked better as well. So I'm not sure what the keys are there. I think there's a lot of good tape from tonight, both positives and negatives, that the coaching staff will be able to look at and make those proper adjustments or kind of give them things to focus on to make that lineup more efficient. But it's a work in progress. And I think the thing is, we all know how great Casey Wallace has been playing, and I'll get into him here soon. And we know how he looks with the starters. And so, yes, it's frustrating at times not starting that starting lineup with Casey in it, because the Thunder typically get off to better starts of the game when that's the starting lineup rather than the double bigs. But you already know what you have in that. So what we're seeing is something that Justin's harped on a lot recently on this podcast is getting those data points and working through some of those kinks and issues. And so that way, when you get to the playoffs, you have all these multitude of options and lineup versatility. And so we'll see. There's some interesting matchups coming up. Obviously, the back-to-back with Denver will be interesting to see how much Mark plays the double bigs and just continue to see how it improves and how much more comfortable these players get playing alongside one another. My next one, let's see, a couple comments really quick. Corey Hurt, double big lineup really just isn't good. Hopefully they can figure it out before the playoffs. Yes, I agree. Okay, great transition here. Carson Carpenter asked me, yo, are you worried about the defense? Let's dive into my second big takeaway of the night. Thunder's recent defensive concerns. Over the past 5 games, the Thunder have a 118.4 defensive rating, but a 126.2 offensive rating, 7.8 net rating. Over the past 10, that defensive rating drops, gets improved, so 114.5, but still not elite like we're used to. I think the thing that stood out to me the most when I was diving into this is pre-All-Star versus post-All-Star break. Pre-All-Star, the Thunder had a 104.5 defensive rating, a 12.8 net rating, which is just historical and insane. Compare that to post-All-Star break, the Thunder have a 117.1 defensive rating compared to that 104 defensive rating. That's insane. Obviously, they have let their foot up the gas a little bit on that end of the floor. What is it, right? Is it just a lack of effort? Is it injuries? And just going through it, I think the simple answer here is, you're incorporating another big-time player back in the lineup and Chet. You're trying to figure out the best lineups to utilize him and his defense. And that also kind of, throws off some of the chemistry that these guys have built throughout the regular season and some of the lineups that they become accustomed to. You also have that ridiculous stretch of games that I just mentioned. I mentioned, I think last night, Nick Gallo's stat about all the different games that Thunder have in March. And I think through it all, they only have one stretch of games where they're at home more than one night. It's a lot of travel. And Mark Daydon also mentioned that. I know that kind of seems like an excuse for us Thunder fans or us fans who are just watching the games on our couches, and these guys should be well rested. And that's not the case. That takes a lot out of you. There's so much that goes into that. These guys are tired. Combine that with my next big takeaway, which is the injuries, and we'll get into that. Knock on wood, nothing big, but a lot of just small injuries that are starting to pile up during the stretch. I think this Thunder team just needs to get back home. We saw how good they were during the holidays when they had that huge home stretch and went on those huge runs and beat teams like the Knicks and the Celtics and how well they were playing. We saw the role players play so well, back at home. And then on the flip side, we've seen role players for these other teams when the Thunder have been away, those guys stepping up and making impossible shots, and it's seeming like teams can't miss against the Thunder. When the Thunder get back home on a home stretch coming up, I think that here at the end of the month is really going to help them. And then April gets a little better as well. So I think it's kind of a combination of all the above. That sounds like a lot of excuses, but I think it's real. And we're just in a stretch of the NBA season that's just really, really tough, which brings me to the Thunder injuries. Isaiah Joe's still out with back soreness. That's his second straight game, I believe, kind of 2.5 if you want to include when he, Friday night when he left the game early with that back soreness. Chet came back from his ankle sprain, which was great, but obviously Chet's been banged up and is still, I'm sure that doesn't feel 100%. He's still battling that. Dub's wrist, we've seen him holding on to it since before the All-Star break, it bugging him and him continuing to tweak it on drives. It was great to see him come back in the game tonight. And he had, when he came back in, he made a lot of great things happen. And I thought he had a really good game again, even if it wasn't his career high like last night. But he continues to hold on to that wrist. And then you have iHeart, obviously with the face injury, the nasal fracture, wearing the mask and stuff, which can't be comfortable and probably, kind of throws him off a little bit of his game, but also the KT tape on him and so many other players. There's just these small nagging injuries that happen during the stretch of the season. And like I said, I think the sooner the Thunder can get back home to that home stretch, they're not traveling. I think that's going to do wonders for this team. And hopefully there's no major injuries that pop up after this. Thunder hot streak update. Oh, Smoot mentioned, is loose finger not a mallet anymore? Yeah, I don't know. He's playing like it is, but funny enough, when he had the mallet finger injury, he was actually shooting the ball really well and was looking great. So I'm not sure. There hasn't really been updates on that, but I'm not seeing him play with a splint or anything, or seeing it with it wrapped up or taped up, unless I'm missing that. So I think he's probably better at this point, which is good. Drew Holiday, I believe, recently got mallet finger as well. Kind of interesting too. Fairly similar archetype of players. So yeah, I'm not sure on Dort's update, but that's just another example, right? Seems like every player's kind of battling something at this point. So like I said, we need that home stretch. We'll get into that here at the end of the podcast. But my last big takeaway here, like I said, it's kind of cheating because I want to talk about 3 players. But Thunder hot streak update. Dub, Kaysen Wallace, and Wiggins are the three that really stood out when I was thinking about this because they have been playing at an extremely high level. I have these pulled up. This is over the last 5 games. Wiggins is averaging 16.2 points on 50% from the floor, 41.9% from 3 on 6.2 3-point attempts per game. Has been absolutely incredible. Kaysen Wallace, another player who's just really shining on both ends of the floor recently. 13.2 points per game for Kaysen. He's shooting 49% from the floor, 34.6% from 3. Kind of surprised me. That's a little lower than I would have guessed, but also on 5.2 3-point attempts. The Thunder are putting up a lot of threes. That's and they're making them at a high clip, which is why I think we're seeing, I rattled off the offensive defensive ratings here pre and post All-Star break. I think that's why we're seeing the offensive rating go up as much as it is. And then obviously Jalen Williams, J-Dub, especially after his game last night, has been incredible. He's averaging over the last 5 games 26.8 points on 49% from the floor, and the big number is 44.1% from 3 on nearly 7 3-point attempts per game. Pretty incredible. I just wanted to mention that as we look at the box score for all 3 of these players from tonight's game. Dub had 24 points, 8 of 16 from the floor, 4 of 5 from 3, 4 of 6 just from the free throw line. An extremely efficient game from J-Dub, who was kind of messing with that wrist there at the end of the game. Also had a steal and a block. J-Dub continues to play at a very high level. And the exciting thing to me is even outside of his huge career high explosion last night, it seems like in the fourth quarter and in those second unit lineups, now that Chet's been back, he's making his shots. He's getting to his spots like he has been, but he's making them at a higher clip, and he's just being way more aggressive and getting to the rim, which is huge. And he's finishing around the rim a lot better, combined with his continued hot 3-point shooting, which has just been improving throughout the season. That's dangerous to have a 1B or a 2 alongside Shai Gilgeous-Alexander playing at that level. And I hope that continues into the playoffs because, like we've seen, Thunder are really going to need that with defenses just doing everything they can to try and stop and double Shai. So J-Dub tonight, great game. Kaysen Wallace had 14 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 4 of 9 from the floor, 2 of 5 from 3. 2 of those in that second quarter were just gigantic to get Thunder back in the game. 4 of 4 from the free throw line, and he had 3 steals. I thought he had a block, but he didn't. Kaysen has been incredible. And like I said, he's just playing at such a high level and just continues to seem like he's improving and gaining confidence as the season goes along with each game, which is great to see. And then Aaron Wiggins. That's one reason I wanted to bring up the past 5 game stats. We can go into the past 10, but it's not really worth doing at this point on a late night post game. This was Wiggins' first game, I believe, in like 14 games where he didn't score in double digits. 8 points tonight for Wiggins, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 of 9 from the floor, 2 of 5 from 3, had a steal, 2 turnovers. Wasn't Wiggins' best game. I also think he struggled some defensively, especially on the perimeter. We've seen that off and on from Wiggins throughout the season. But kind of like Lou Dort, like we've talked about, but kind of the opposite. When Wiggins is playing so well offensively, it seems like his defense improves. He's a little more engaged on that end. Tonight, when he didn't have it going, it felt like he kind of struggled with some of these smaller, quicker perimeter players for the Houston Rockets. So not Wiggins' best game, but hopefully he bounces back and continues to play at a high level like we've become accustomed to really ever since before the holidays, which is awesome. Smoot says 8 points and saved basketball. That's exactly right, Smoot. Dorla said Chet fell on his bum hard against night. Yeah, Chet continues to take hard tumbles, and you just hold your breath every single time, hoping that he doesn't have a new injury. Just quickly tonight, Chet had 11 points, 11 rebounds, which is awesome to see the double-double, but he was 4 of 11 from the floor, 0 of 3 from 3, 3 of 4 from the free throw line. He had 3 blocks and 2 steals, which is great, but also had, where'd the turnovers go? 4 turnovers. And just kind of is struggling with that ball handling. We saw that, his first full year back being healthy and summer league heading into last year when he played all 82 games. He just keeps that ball so high. His center of gravity is so high, and that allows some of the smaller defenders to kind of pick his pockets often. Saw that a lot tonight. But that got better as the season progressed last year, which was huge for this team. Hopefully, as Chet gets his legs back under him, and as the game progresses, he has more endurance. I think that will hopefully help, but it's something to monitor for sure. Corey Hurt says Wiggins in the starting lineup, we would be scary good offensively. Yes, that's true, Corey. 1, though, I think the defense obviously would struggle there some. And 2, I think Mark, that's why we haven't seen Caruso really start with this team outside of them having injuries. He started 1 or 2 games, I think just 1. Mark likes having those sparks off the bench. You need another creator in that second unit. We've talked so much about that with J-Dub. When J-Dub's being the focal point of the defense and teams are doubling him or forcing him to drive and kick to teammates, and you get in the half court and there's only 8 seconds left on the shot clock, you need a player like Aaron Wiggins in those lineups to be able to create offense and get you some just ridiculous points, sometimes out of nowhere. And I think that's why we don't see Wiggins as much now that Chet's healthy. In the starting lineups, I like him coming off the bench quite a bit more. Smoot says, how many stocks does Chet really get in stocks? 1, 2. How many stocks does Chet really get? I don't know. Not sure what you're getting at there, Smoot. Jacob Niffens Harris says, has all that palm, but still decides to hold the ball like a napkin. Yeah, that's a good point. He needs to get more physical and stronger when holding the ball. But I think a lot of those skills, like I mentioned, are coming when he's dribbling and trying to attack to the rim. When he's decisive and aggressive and keeps the ball down low, uses his strength to be able to power past defenders and get to the rim, good things typically happen. But when he's just kind of holding the ball on the perimeter and starts to dribble a little bit before making a move, that's typically when we see some of those other perimeter defenders be able to pick his pockets. Oh, Smoot says not like us reference. Taylor, sorry, I missed that, Smoot. Okay, great comments in the chat. Sorry I wasn't able to get to all of them. Looking ahead really quick before we get out of there, just because I mentioned how tough this schedule has recently been in terms of travel and playing on the road and all the games in a short period. Coming up, the Thunder have a big game, I believe national TV, against the Grizzlies on Wednesday. That's in Memphis, which kind of stinks. They have to travel again, of course. Then they get the Blazers at home 2 days later. Sunday, 2 days after that, they get the Nuggets at home. It's a back-to-back Sega Baba against the Nuggets at home again. That's going to be a really interesting stretch. It's great that the Thunder are going to have a couple nights at home, and I hope they can kind of use that to get back into form and to hopefully help with some of these small injuries. They play the Celtics, which will be a huge one next Wednesday on the road. Then they play the Pistons on the road and the Bucks on the road. That's a pretty tough 3-game road trip, East Coast, or in the East, not East Coast. That'll be interesting to monitor. Obviously, the Bucks are the Bucks. They haven't been incredible this season, but they're a tough team. Pistons are one of the hottest teams in the league, and we know who the Celtics are. Then finally, they get the Sixers at home, the Hornets at home. They play on the West Coast against the Clippers. Then they get the Grizzlies, Pacers, Bulls, and Pistons at home to end the month and enter the last month of the regular season in April. So that stretch, like I mentioned, is going to be huge to get these guys healthy before the playoffs, to not have to travel as much. That's something to monitor. Just survive these next couple of weeks, continue to pull out wins, even if they aren't as pretty as we become accustomed to over the first part of the season. Thunder will be just fine. So it should be a really exciting end to the season. We will have you all covered here at the Uncontested. Be sure to tune in Wednesday after the Memphis Grizzlies game. We will do a group podcast with hopefully a lot of us, maybe a couple of us. We'll see because it'll be late. And then we'll have you all covered through the rest of the season through that stretch like I just mentioned. So thank you all again for tuning in here late on a Monday night. Hope you all have a great rest of your week. Everyone here in Oklahoma, stay safe from the storms tonight and tomorrow. And until next time, and always, Thunder up.